Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus arcade video. Today we're going to be taking a look at Initial D Arcade Stage 7 AAX. This game was released on November 28th of 2012 on the Sega RingEdge 2 arcade hardware. Now this footage of course is from Anime Next 2016 in Atlantic City, New Jersey, because in that arcade room, as you had seen in my previous video, they had 4 cabinets, which was actually pretty nice, as you could do some nice versus matches. Of course, what you're seeing here is not me playing because I didn't have my tripod with me, so this is like me holding the camera desperately trying to get a decent shot here, which, considering I didn't want to like sit on the person's shoulders or anything, I think I did a pretty nice job here. So you're going to see a couple of matches. There are a couple of losers, a couple of winners, but if you've never seen this game before, it'll give you kind of an idea of what the game operates like. Now, for some reason, System16.com says that the game was released in 2013, but I kind of trust the official website a bit more that says it was released in 2012, because, of course, that makes a lot more sense. Now, you could, when you played it here, you could buy a license card from the staff, or you could just play without one. And the easiest way to tell, you'll see a few people in these videos that will have a license card. Not in this gameplay, because I guess none of these guys had one. But if you see like a letter and a number, and usually their portrait will be customized, that will indicate that they have the license card. And I think at least one of the matches is actually 2 of the people. I'm going to read some of the stuff right off the website here, because unfortunately, since this game is fairly new, there is like little like information out there about this. And plus, I don't believe it had an official USA release, because as you can see from what you're seeing here, it's all in Japanese. It says this is a driving game based on the Initial D by Shuichi Shigeno. Was released in, which the original game, I'm guessing, was released in 2002. Real-time battle has become possible between Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, from the Initial D Arcade Stage 6 AA version, released in March of 2011. In the latest, well, some of this isn't perfectly English, but in the latest version, they added what was called the tag battle dynamic, which I actually had seen this one time during this whole visit here, which somehow it doesn't really make much sense to me. You'll see like 4 drivers in the corners, but somehow you're still actually 2-on-2, which I've only saw this one time because all 4 cabinets kind of have to be in harmony when that happens. And what normally was happening the whole time that I was at the expo is 2 players would be dueling each other and the other 2 players would be dueling each other. So there was very few times that could possibly happen. And now it says the new tag mode was called Operation Kanto. And it elaborates a little bit more here. In the new Operation Kanto mode, you and a friend can tag team rival characters, with one racing uphill and the other racing downhill. In the new Kanto's Fastest Project mode, you and your friend can tag team rival characters with one racing uphill and the other racing downhill, obtaining tag scores by grabbing ace panels through the course. The panels come in gold or silver. Your score depends on the combination of panels obtained by both players. Increase your score by both grabbing the same color panels. Take on the rivals who have tormented Takumi. Are you a tight enough team to win? Plus, if you both have Initial D licenses, beating the rival characters gives you 1 free play in online tag versus. Become Project D double aces and defeat the toughest rivals. And of course, like usual, it talks about its new coursers. There are a total of 14 courses, including 2 new courses. Includes much awaited new rivals from the latest issues of the manga. Limited edition complete cars from the tuning shop and car manufacturers have also been added, making the total of 43 cars more than ever before. Customize and tune your vehicle so it can handle the toughest tracks. And that's one thing that was cool about this, is I actually did see quite a few, like, decent races. Like, you see this one, it's not like, one person running away with the race and the other person just, like, really losing. Well, now it's a little bit more, but you'll see he's catching up a little bit. And now it says the new My Character parts for female and male characters. My Character parts for female and male characters have been overhauled, and there are even new costumes. It's going on to the next race now, if you can see. And just as I mentioned in the last race, neither of these people have license cards either. In addition to new parts from Initial D6, you've been upgraded to Initial D7, allowing you to create more sophisticated characters. Create your own unique character for everyone to admire. And then, of course, it goes on to an explanation here about the machine itself, showing you that there's a steering wheel, gas pedal, brake pedal. If you have seen my videos where I did the my steering panel, where the shifter is kind of on the panel next to the steering wheel, the way that these were is, like, down where the card reader was, that's where the shifter lever is. It's no longer up on the control panel. So it actually mimics, like, a real car a little bit more. Now, from what I understand, Initial D, what I was going to say is, what I can understand, the way that the RingEdge and RingEdge 2 work is RingEdge and RingEdge 2 games can work on either RingEdge or RingEdge 2, but if you run one of the newer games on the RingEdge 2 hardware, it tends to run a bit better, because think of it as the RingEdge being an older computer and the RingEdge 2 being a newer computer. It's not necessarily like Naomi and Naomi 2, where Naomi was one spec and the Naomi 2 kind of had double the processors, an extra geometry processor, more than double the RAM in most areas. Basically, when it comes to RingEdge and RingEdge 2, sure, RingEdge 2 was a little bit more powerful, boasting an i3 540 at 3 GHz and a GeForce GT 545 with 2 GB of RAM. But if you look at the RingEdge, if you look at the original RingEdge hardware, more or less when it came to switching from one to the other, the RingEdge was like the older tech. It was like the Pentium E2160 CPU, 120 GHz. And one of the older NVIDIA GPUs, it only had 1 gig of RAM, but more or less what they had done when they upgraded from RingEdge to RingEdge 2 is that the RingEdge hardware was kind of going end of life as far as computer specs go, so they kind of had to kind of do a refresh, kind of like when you go to the store where they sell computers, and it's not necessary that the computers are old. For everyone knows, it could have just been like a few months, and they would get rid of the new computers to put out the old ones, get rid of them. Because I can remember when I used to work at a store that sold computers, it could be anywhere from like 3 to 6 months when you would switch out the new computers. And as I said, it's not necessarily that new stuff is like all brand new and amazing. It's just that, let's say your Core i5 processor of this generation has kind of gone end of life, and they want to bring out, let's say, the next generation ones. So they would just get rid of the old ones. So more or less, just think, as I said, think of RingEdge 2 as a refresh. They did up the specs a bit, meaning like you'll get like that full HD 60 frames per second, whereas let's say the old ones might have ran at that 1366 by 768 resolution that that Lindbergh ran at, instead of like your full HD 60 FPS. And now, the way I can describe Initial D Arcade Stage 7's physics, they're not nearly as drifty as Initial D Arcade Stage 4, but I wouldn't say they're as stiff as, say, Initial D Arcade Stage 1 through 3. It's kind of a fusion of the two, where I would say not really too much of either. I played at least 3 or 4 matches. I think I kind of split them in half and one half and lost half, because the thing was, a lot of times at these cabinets, there would be people who are like so awesomely awesome at this because they have their cards and they're like in the A's or the D's as far as that goes. And if you're familiar with the Q-Dan system and a lot of fighting games, the lower your letter, the better you are. And you'll see this guy here is a D3 on the left. I think I may have faced him a couple times. His name is Dagami. And I think he beat me every time I played him because he was a lot better than I was. Because keep in mind, the few times that I actually played this in the arcade room here were the only times I ever had played it. And a lot of the people who end up playing the initial D games here, like the one guy I talked to, he said, oh, at every con I go to, I just bring my license card and I just play more every time. So, let's say if you have even 6 cons a year, that's like a lot more experience than, say, someone like me who played for the first time. Because this was like the newest ever initial D game I'd ever seen. And that's one thing I have to admit, even when I was playing Initial D Arcade Stage 4, there are some crazy curvy courses, like the one you'll see here, all these hairpin turns. They will really throw you off if you're not knowing what you're doing, of course. And the thing that you like instantly want to do is just go as fast as you possibly can, but I can tell you in some of these courses, you might not be over like 100 miles per hour ever, because there are just so many turns and you kind of have to drift and slow down, and that's going to take you a lot slower. So the secret to playing Initial D a lot of times is not really the going too fast, which in a lot of the earlier courses and the less curvy ones that actually kind of worked, but it's kind of having more of a strategic way of driving than a over-the-top, I have to go faster than him or else type thing, because that's one thing I saw a lot of people who were even less experienced than me, which I'll go on record as saying I'm not the most professional Initial D driver ever, but I kind of have a little bit more experience than the person just stepping to the Stage 7 cabinet for the first time, since I played like some of the previous entries. But a lot of times they will just like floor it, and they will end up not like shifting all that well. And I remember one of the times I played, I can honestly tell you because I played one of the easier courses. But as far as visuals go, I could say they're a bit of a step up from Stage 4 and 5, but I won't say it's like a night and day. If you compared like Initial D 1 through 3 to 7, yeah, it's a bit of an upgrade, but as far as going from Initial D 4 to Initial D 7, I would kind of compare it to, like, let's say, comparing a late-gen PlayStation 3 game to a late, early-gen PlayStation 4. While the PS4 game is going to really, like, give you a bit of an increase in, like, a little bit of the FPS and, like, maybe some particles, it's not going to be a night-and-day difference until, like, developers really know what they're doing with that newer hardware. So, it looks great, don't get me wrong, but considering I'd played 4, and I've seen like 5 running on my Lindbergh a little bit, it's a decent increase, especially when weather conditions come to play, which unfortunately none of the gameplays I captured had any of the weather effects. But for the general like day-night driving, it's fairly similar. And the one thing I can say is a bit strange is, as opposed to previous entries, is you don't really see fans out all that much. And if I recall, when you did, they weren't all that impressive looking. But it goes without saying, this is an awesome game to play. If you ever see Initial D Arcade Stage 7 AAX, which is what the official website calls it, I know System 16 does not, but if you ever see it, I would highly recommend giving this game a try, because like the earlier games in the series, it is a really fun game to play. Oh, and I forgot to mention, but the RingEdge 2 hardware uses a 32GB solid-state drive for storage. And this is going to be our final match here. At least I got one match where you saw the guys using the Initial D card, so I could kind of show you what it looked like. And I was just glad with some of this gameplay, I was able to get pretty close to the screen. So it's not like, one of my first gameplays, I was actually pretty far, because I didn't want, like, the guy yelling at me that I was, like, right out over his shoulder or something. And one of the things I heard, like, during playing these games, is, like, there's a lot of the songs... Yeah, this is actually, I was about to say, a lot of the songs come from some of the earlier games, like what's playing right now is Night of Fire. Another tune I remember was Remember Me. I think that song where she says, Love is a Danger, that might have also been in there. But that's the cool part about a lot of these games, the songs are so popular that they'll bring them back. And that's one thing I think is really cool about some of these higher def games, is how the portraits of the characters really, like, go crazy when you're ahead and when you fall behind. It's a nice little effect that the earlier games didn't have. And I know in the Legend of the Streets mode, in this and in the Lindbergh ones, your opponent will actually talk. Like, if you recall in my initial Arcade Stage 4 video, I always thought that's kind of cool how they're taunting you when you're ahead of them. And I can remember the two guys from Tokyo, like, they'd be, you actively hear the two of them arguing in the background, you're like, oh wow, this actually makes it feel a little bit more real, even though of course it's highly fictitious, and, you know, it's from an anime or a manga. And that's one thing I like to hear in these videos when I see, like, the people and they're really, like, jockeying for position. A lot of times when you're watching two players play a racing game, it's not nearly as fun when, like, one person's, like, totally dominating. It's kind of cool when they kind of, like, more or less play the cat and mouse, where one person's ahead, then the other person's ahead, and then they fall behind. It's always really cool to have, like, a real competitive match, because I can remember there were a few times when I wasn't filming that honestly I just watched to see, like, how good, like, the left player was or how good the right player was. And on any of these videos, if you ever saw, like, somebody wearing, like, a white wristband, at Anime Next, that was, like, the 18+ wristband, so if there was an age-restricted event or panel that you wanted to go to, that wristband was, like, what they just had to see to know that you were over 18. Which, I would honestly say, considering what I saw, the vast majority of people had those wristbands. But, of course, there was the exception of the children that people brought, and, like, people who were just, like, in their teens, earlier teens. But as I had said before, basically any game in the racing games are really fun. I would highly recommend Initial D as a series, but especially if you could see any of the later entries like this one running on Sega's newer hardware. It's really fun. And on a side note, I probably mentioned in other videos, but Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate Arcade / Last Round Arcade ran on the RingEdge 2 as well. Just a brief mention there. But yeah, definitely a fun game, and I would highly recommend it if you happen to be in that rare arcade that has new arcade games, or of course if you're at your latest anime / video game con and they actually have, like, new arcade games. I think the company that brought these was called Tokyo Shock, if you look on an instruction card I put in the beginning. So if you go to an expo that has them doing the arcades, then you'll be able to play some newer games. But this has been another Game Nexus arcade video, and I will see you later. Bye.